The world outside is held in a deep, velvet silence as the stars begin to fade into the soft gray of a coming dawn. And inside the stone walls of the brew house, the air is thick with the comforting, earthy scent of roasted barley and sweet dried herbs that linger in the rafters like a quiet memory. A single low ember in the hearth casts a dim, rhythmic orange glow across the smooth copper vats and the heavy wooden barrels, creating a space that is perfectly safe, perfectly warm, and entirely still. You are invited now to let your breath slow down, to match the quiet, steady pulse of this ancient stone room, and to drift away into the gentle, repetitive motions of a day built of steam and grain and peace. Let the warmth of the fire wrap around you as we begin our journey into the quiet work of the brewer. Chapter 1. The brewer stirs in his small bed, the wool blankets heavy and warm against his skin, and he listens to the absolute stillness of the house before the first bird has even thought to sing its morning song. He rises slowly, his feet finding the cool, solid floorboards, and he dresses in the dim light of a single tallow candle, feeling the coarse texture of his linen tunic and the familiar weight of his leather apron as it settles over his shoulders like a protective shell. He walks through the quiet house, his footsteps making a soft, rhythmic sound that echoes gently in the hallways. And as he opens the heavy door to the brew house, the scent of the previous day's malt greets him like an old friend, a smell that is deep and nutty and warm. The air in the brew house is cool but not cold, held in the thick embrace of stone walls that have stood for generations. And the brewer begins his work with a slow and practiced ease, reaching for the heavy wooden scoop that hangs by the grain bin. He begins to move the malted barley, the dried grains clicking softly against each other like tiny, smooth pebbles as he lifts them into the hopper, a repetitive motion that feels as natural as breathing. Lift, pour, settle. Lift, pour, settle. And the sound is like a soft, dry rain falling on a thatched roof. He moves with a deliberate slowness, his arms moving in wide, graceful arcs that require no thought, allowing his mind to remain in that soft, hazy space between waking and dreaming where everything is calm and nothing is urgent. He fills the great mash tun, the wooden staves of the vessel feeling smooth and slightly damp under his fingers, and he takes a moment to run his hand over the grain, feeling its dryness and its potential, a sea of golden seeds waiting for the water to wake them up. Next, he turns to the water barrel, which is filled with clear, cold spring water that reflects the flickering light of his candle like a dark, polished mirror, and he begins to transfer the liquid using a large ceramic pitcher. The sound of the pouring water creating a low, trickling melody that fills the room with a sense of freshness and life. He does this many times, his body swaying slightly with each pour, feeling the weight of the water in his muscles and the coolness of the splashes on his hands, a sensation that is grounding and peaceful in the early morning gloom. He prepares the fire beneath the copper kettle, laying the dried logs of oak and birch with a careful, quiet precision, stacking them so they will catch the flame and burn with a steady, low heat that will warm the water without boiling it too quickly. He strikes the flint, the sparks falling like tiny dying stars into the tinder, and as the small flame begins to grow and lick the wood, he watches the shadows on the ceiling dance in a slow, hypnotic rhythm that makes his eyes feel heavy and soft. The room is starting to warm now, the heat from the hearth spreading out in a gentle wave that touches his face and his arms. And the brewer stands for a long minute, just watching the fire, his breath becoming a part of the quiet hum of the building. He gathers his stirring paddle, a long piece of ash wood that has been worn smooth by years of use, and he lays it across the top of the tun, checking its balance and its weight, finding comfort in the simple reliability of his tools. The world outside is still gray and misty, the trees standing like silent sentinels in the fog. But here in the brew house, everything is golden and warm and ready, a sanctuary of grain and stone where the day unfolds one slow step at a time. He feels a deep sense of belonging as he checks the temperature of the water, dipping his finger into the surface and feeling the first hints of warmth, a subtle change that signals the beginning of the true work. Yet even this transition is quiet and gentle. He moves back to the grain bin to sweep up a few stray kernels, the broom making a soft swish against the floor, a sound that is as rhythmic and calming as a heartbeat. And he finds himself smiling at the simple perfection of this quiet morning. The silence of the brew house is a living thing, a presence that wraps around him and keeps the noise of the world at bay, allowing him to focus entirely on the texture of the wood and the smell of the grain and the slow, steady rise of the heat. He is not in a hurry, for the beer cannot be rushed, and he knows that the best things come to those who can wait in the stillness, who can match their own pace to the slow turning of the seasons and the gentle heating of the water. He leans against the stone wall, feeling its solidity and its age, and he breathes in the rising steam, a misty veil that begins to blur the edges of the room and turn the brew house into a dreamlike world of soft light and heavy warmth as the day slowly breathes its way into being. Chapter 2. The water has reached its perfect heat, a soft and steaming warmth that is ready to mingle with the grain, and the brewer begins the long and rhythmic task of mashing, a process that will occupy his hands and his heart for hours as the sun climbs slowly into the sky. He pours the heated water into the mash tun, the liquid disappearing into the golden grain with a thirsty, quiet hiss, and the smell that rises up is suddenly intense and sweet. A thick aroma of honey and roasted earth that fills his lungs and settles his mind into a deep, meditative state. He takes up the long ash paddle, his hands gripping the smooth wood with a relaxed strength, and he begins to stir the mixture, moving the paddle in slow, wide circles that churn the grain and the water into a heavy, fragrant porridge. Round and round he goes, the motion starting in his shoulders and flowing through his arms, a hypnotic cycle that feels like the turning of a great, silent clock. Push, pull, circle, push, pull, circle. And the resistance of the mash is a steady, comforting weight that keeps him anchored in the present moment. The steam rises in thick, white clouds that swirl around his head, smelling of the summer fields and the warm sun, and the light from the high window catches the moisture in the air, creating shafts of shimmering brilliance that cut through the dimness of the room. He watches the way the grain swirls in the water, the individual husks dancing in the current he creates, and he finds himself lost in the patterns, his eyes half closed as he follows the repetitive path of the paddle through the thick, sweet liquid. The warmth of the room is now a deep, all-encompassing heat that makes his limbs feel heavy and loose, and the only sound in the world is the soft, wet sloshing of the mash and the rhythmic creak of his leather boots on the stone floor. He does not rush the stirring, for he knows that every motion helps to release the sweetness of the grain, and so he embraces the slowness, letting the repetition wash over him like a gentle tide that pulls away all his worries and leaves only the peace of the work. Sometimes he pauses for just a moment to wipe the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, his skin feeling warm and damp. And then he returns to the rhythm, the paddle becoming an extension of his own body as he moves in harmony with the grain. The air is so thick with the scent of the malt that he can almost taste it, a sugary and wholesome flavor that promises a rich and golden ale. And he feels a deep satisfaction in the knowledge that he is creating something that will bring comfort and joy to the village. The steam settles on the stone walls in tiny, glistening beads of water, and the copper vats shine with a dull, red light that seems to pulse with the heat of the fire, making the whole brewhouse feel like a living, breathing creature that is working alongside him. He moves his hand slightly on the paddle to change the pressure, feeling the different textures of the mash as it begins to break down and release its sugars, the liquid becoming thicker and darker and more fragrant with every passing hour. He watches a small spider spinning a web in the corner of the rafters, its movements as slow and deliberate as his own, and he feels a kinship with all quiet things that work in the shadows to create something beautiful and strong. The repetition of the stirring becomes a form of prayer, a silent acknowledgement of the bounty of the earth and the steady passage of time. And he finds that his mind is empty of all but the rhythm and the warmth and the sweet, heavy smell of the malt, The light in the room shifts from the pale yellow of morning to the deep gold of midday, and the shadows move slowly across the floor. But the brewer remains in his circle, his arms never tiring, because they are moved by a force that is older than he is, a tradition of labor and patience that has been handed down through the centuries. He feels the steam softening his skin and the heat relaxing his heart, and he is content to stay in this one spot for as long as the grain requires. A guardian of the mash who finds his greatest joy in the simple act of being present and still. The world outside may be busy with the noise of trade and the chatter of people, but here in the heart of the brew house, there is only the steam and the wood and the slow circular dance of the paddle, a world of peace that is as solid and reliable as the stone beneath his feet. He breathes in the sweetness one more time, his lungs filling with the warm, humid air, and he feels a profound sense of gratitude for the quiet life he leads, for the grain that grows in the fields, and the water that flows from the spring, and the fire that brings them all together in this beautiful, slow alchemy. He rests his forehead against the paddle for a second, feeling the vibration of the liquid, and he knows that everything is exactly as it should be in this soft, golden hour. Chapter 3. The long day of brewing is drawing to a close as the fire in the hearth begins to settle into a bed of glowing, ruby embers, and the brewer begins the final, quiet tasks of the evening with a body that feels heavy and pleasantly tired. He drains the sweet, golden liquid from the mash tun into the cooling trays. The sound of the running wort, a gentle, splashing murmur that is as soothing as the sound of a distant waterfall in a forest of ancient trees. He watches the liquid spread out in thin, shimmering sheets, the steam rising one last time before the cool evening air begins to take hold and settle the brew into a state of rest. He moves with a slow, deliberate grace as he begins to clean his tools, taking the long ash paddle and rinsing it with clear, cool water until the wood is clean and pale once more, then hanging it back on its peg with a quiet and final click. He sweeps the floor of the brewhouse, the broom making a soft, rhythmic shush as it gathers the stray husks of grain and the bits of dried herbs, leaving the stone clean and ready for the next time the fire is lit. The sun has dipped below the hills now, and the light in the room has turned to a soft, dusky blue, the shadows stretching out to fill the corners and wrap the barrels in a cloak of velvet darkness. He closes the heavy oak doors of the brewhouse, the latch falling into place with a solid and comforting sound that signals the end of his labor and the beginning of his rest, and he walks back toward his small cottage through the cooling twilight. The air outside is crisp and fresh, smelling of the damp earth and the evening mist, and he takes a deep breath, feeling the contrast between the heat of the vats and the coolness of the night, a balance that makes his skin tingle with a gentle, sleepy energy. Inside his home, he lights a single small lamp, the flame steady and low, and he sits at his wooden table to eat a simple meal of bread and cheese, the food tasting rich and honest after the long day of sweet smells and heavy steam. He eats slowly, savoring every bite, his mind already beginning to drift toward the softness of his bed and the deep, dreamless sleep that he knows is waiting for him. The house is silent, save for the occasional creak of the timbers as they settle in the night air, and the brewer feels a profound sense of peace as he washes his face and hands, the water feeling soft and kind against his skin. He moves to his bedroom, the shadows dancing on the walls in a slow and friendly way, and he removes his heavy apron and his boots, feeling lighter and more relaxed with every layer he sheds. He climbs into his bed, the linen sheets feeling cool and crisp at first, but quickly warming to the heat of his body as he pulls the thick wool blankets up to his chin, tucking them in around his shoulders until he is encased in a cocoon of warmth and safety. He lies there for a moment with his eyes open, looking at the dim outlines of his room, the familiar shapes of the chest and the chair and the window where the moonlight filters through in a pale silver beam. His muscles feel loose and heavy, a deep ache of satisfaction that comes from a day spent in good work, and he lets his head sink into the soft pillow, his thoughts slowing down until they are nothing more than the gentle pulse of his own heartbeat. The scent of the brew house still clings to his hair and his skin, a faint and comforting reminder of the grain and the fire, and he feels as though he is still floating in the steam and the rhythm of the paddle. The world is far away now, a distant and hazy place that has no power over the stillness of his room, and he feels himself sinking deeper and deeper into the mattress, as if he were being carried away on a slow, dark river of peace. His eyelids grow heavy, the silver light of the moon blurring into a soft glow, and he takes one last deep breath of the quiet night air, his lungs expanding and contracting in a perfect, easy rhythm. The silence of the village is total, a deep and liquid quiet that fills his ears and his heart. And he knows that the beer is cooling safely in the trays. The yeast is ready to do its silent work, and the world is exactly as it should be. He closes his eyes, and the darkness is warm and welcoming, a soft embrace that pulls him down into a world of dreams, where the steam rises forever, and the grain is always golden, and the work is always gentle. Sleep comes to him like a slow tide, washing over his feet and his hands and his head, until he is completely submerged in the beautiful, heavy stillness of the night, resting deeply and fully in the knowledge of a day well spent. The brewer sleeps, and in his dreams, the paddle still turns in slow, wide circles, a constant and calming rhythm that will guide him through the dark and into the light of a new and quiet dawn, where everything remains soft and safe and still.